right, let's get started. I'd like to welcome you all to the 59th Honors Colloquium entitled Just Good Food. This is my flight attendant portion of the beginning of this colloquium, where I tell you that the exits are back that way. The bathrooms, I think, are across the hallway. Don't run up to the stage if anything goes wrong. No photos or video recordings, that's important, please. And also, if you could turn off your phones, well, maybe not turn them off, just put them on flight mode, or maybe not flight mode either. Put them on, don't ring, don't let them ring during this colloquium, that would be great. I would like to now introduce to you our URI president, Marc Parlanche, who will offer our first welcome. Thank you.
Good evening, everybody. It's so good to see all of you. Good to see more people coming. And also, I understand we have many people following online this evening, so welcome to you as well. I thank you, Karen De Bruin, for your leadership and for running this year's Honors Symposium. So welcome yourself. It's really just a very, very special weekly event that happens on Tuesday nights. And I really enjoyed, like many of you, the event last year. This is really an important forum. It serves an educational role. We also hope it sparks important discussions on important and interesting topics, and it addresses pressing global problems. And this year's topic is especially interesting. It's all about food. And as we know, it's really an emerging global issue. It's exacerbated by the war, the invasion in Ukraine, the fact that we have hydrologic extremes, and so we see flooding, but we also see extensive drought. We have malnutrition, we have hunger, we have food prices going in different directions, and we have obviously socioeconomic disparity around the world. And so there's many efforts at URI, and over this semester I hope we'll learn about some of them, but there's certainly a lot of work that's going through, traditionally through the College of Environment and Life Sciences on agriculture. There's research that covers all colleges at the university, including the College of Arts and Sciences. We have extension programs, so there's quite an extensive outreach and working together with community. And there's a couple of other things that I would want to mention. There's quite a bit of work that's going on sustainable aquaculture at the university. And then finally, we have a free farmers market for students on Thursdays at 11 a.m. and 2 p.m. in the afternoon. I think I have the times right, on the quad. So that's really important, and I'm really grateful to all the people that have been working to make that happen. So I'm looking forward to attending this fall and getting to meet all of you, and I hope you come back and bring more friends next week. And so I want to say thanks again. Thanks, Karen.
And now we are honored to have Silvermoon La Rose formally acknowledge the land on which URI is situated. Is Silvermoon? We don't have Silvermoon. Okay. Can somebody improvise? Lauren, would you like to come up and improvise for us? Lauren Spears, the director of the Tamaquag Museum. Thank you.
Colloquium, welcome. Natasuis Makasini Pashao Naha Gansek, Natasuis Loren Spears Englisha Ni Naha Gansek Nahantek, Colloquium at Aki Naha Gansek. Katabatash Katantwa Wuchi Sokanun Ka Kacha Usha Ka Niempaog, Katabatash Katantwa Wuchi Nukasaki, Katabatash Michonk. Katabatash Nitang Sawag Katapatash Katantwa Wuchi Nitangsawag Ninaj. So, hello everyone. Welcome first to our wonderful guest, Winona LaDuke, who you are in such for a treat because I've heard her speak before and it's just very moving, and I'm just grateful for her to be here. And thank you to all of you for being here on the homelands of the Narragansett Nation. And I said to you that I am Loren Spears. I'm the executive director of Tamaquag Museum, and my traditional name is Makasini Pashao, and I am Narragansett Niantic. And I thanked the Creator for all the beauty that surrounds us, for the rain that gives us cleansing, for the thunder beings and the lightning and the storms that bring us cleansing. And thanks to Mother Earth, who gives us all the food and all the necessities that we need. And if we care for Mother Earth, it will care for us. And so I just thanked for all of our relations. And that includes all plants, animals, those that fly, those that walk, those that swim, and those of us that talk. So thank you, and thank you all for being here. Katabatash.
Thank you, Loren, for doing that. That was wonderful. And also, the Tamaquag Museum is moving to URI here very soon, so we're very excited about that. So the honors program gathers a community of scholars, scientists, and artists to provide intellectual excitement and reward to all participants, students, faculty, and the public. And for over half a century, right? Over half a century, we have coordinated honors colloquia. As the new director of the honors program, I am just thrilled that this is my first honors colloquium experience. It's timely, it's important, and it's exciting. Producing a series of this scope requires 1 to 2 years of planning. It's a long process and a large budget. So I'd like to thank first the colloquium coordinators, John Taylor, who is assistant professor of the Department of Plant Sciences and Entomology in the College of Environment and Life Sciences. John, can you just raise your hand or stand up? Thank you. Awesome. And then Marta Gomez-Chiari, who can't be with us this evening because she's traveling, but she's a professor in the Department of Fisheries, Animal, and Veterinary Science, also within the College of Environment and Life Sciences, as we call it, CELS. So thank you to both of them. They've been doing a lot of hard work. I would also like to give a huge thanks in terms of coordination to Anna Blake. Is Anna around? Anna's way in the back there. She is a superstar. She has been coordinating this whole, like all of the details of this colloquium, and I thank her immensely. I'd like to thank all of the honors program sponsors. They can all be found on the program and also on our website. We keep getting new sponsors, so we're very excited about that. And finally, I would like to thank the Department of Gender and Women's Studies and the Eleanor M. and Oscar M. Carlson Women's Studies Annual Endowed Lecture for their support of this evening's speaker. The Carlson Lecture Endowment has financially anchored the Women's Studies program for, I think, since 1980. And this year marks the 50th anniversary of the first Women's Studies course taught at URI in 1972, and that was also the year I was born, so to give you some context. And now to introduce our speaker, we are very honored to introduce, to welcome rather, Cassius Spears Jr., first councilman for the Narragansett Indian Tribe of Rhode Island and soil conservationist for the Rhode Island National Resources Conservation Services. Cassius, if you could come up. Thank you.
Askuikwasin Nitampawag. Winnie Kisak Natasawis Cassius Spears Jr. You'll notice, some of you may have noticed when we had a little earlier, there's also a senior So if you see another person with a cowboy hat, you're pretty close, but not exactly in the right spot. So, yes, my name's Cassius Spears Jr., and I'm the first councilman for the Narragansett Indian tribe, the Narragansett tribe, and I thank Loren for offering those words of acknowledgement for the land. That's important for us to understand that the Narragansett Indian tribe are the original owners, the traditional owners of this place. And this land, and we still maintain that relationship. That stewardship is still a part of our lives and our life ways. Tonight I had the distinct pleasure of welcoming our speaker, and it's a great pleasure because I can tell you, at a tribal level, for us as a tribe, there's protocol. There's protocol on how we interact with each other and how we relate to each other. And for us, for the Narragansett tribe, to be able to welcome another tribe to come into our territory, into our land, is there's protocol around that. There's the ways you do it, and for us, it's a really easy welcome to do, because Winona comes from the Anishinaabe people, and those people are our relatives. They're our relatives. Around here, we call our tribes that are around us sister tribes. But the Anishinaabe people, we look at those as our big brother. So they're the ones that when they come in to teach, to speak, we listen, because they're our older relative. So it's an honor for us as a tribe, as a nation, to be able to have her come here and speak on our lands and speak in those teachings, those original teachings, and to be able to express some of the things that we hold dear as Indigenous people. I had, on a personal level, in my area, I work for USDA on a professional level, and then as a personal level, I'm a leader for the tribe, and sometimes those overlap, and it's a pleasure for me to be able to do the good work in conservation that not only benefits everybody, people today, and helps everybody for today, but it's also enriches my soul as a Indigenous person, as a conservationist. So in some of those times when my discipline aligns with my passion, who I am and what I am, I get to do things. And I got to go to a conference years back and hear Winona speak. And this is when I was young. I was probably 26, and I just got elected to tribal council. I was a young tribal leader, and I got to listen to her speak. And it was a pleasure because when she was talking, some of the words really resonated with me. And she says, and I know she said this many times, she may even say it tonight. I'm sorry, Winona, if I'm stealing any of your thunder. But she told me a message that really resonated and came directed to me, and that was, you can't say that you're sovereign if you can't feed yourself. And as a young tribal leader, that really stuck with me, because at first it generated other questions. If I can't feed myself, I'm not sovereign. One of the things we pride ourselves in Indigenous communities is being sovereign, maintaining that inherent sovereignty that is before longer and older and before everything that's here today, that we hold that sovereign and we maintain that. But the simple question, can I feed myself? Can I feed my family? I had to ask myself that, And then if I can't, if I can't do that individually, can my family, can my tribe do that? Can my community feed themselves? Can my tribe, my nation, can they feed all the citizens within our nation? Can we feed them? And as a young leader, that really perplexed me because, you talk about other types of, ways that we view sovereignty, but that's the basic essence of who we are, is that relationship we have with food and how that relationship that food brings to all our other relatives, our human relatives, like my aunt says, I'm going to call you my aunt, Loren, all those relations, how we relate to them is important, and that one connection point is food in many ways that connects all of us together. So that question is something that I posed to our tribe, and I said, well, how can we call ourselves sovereign nations? How can we be a sovereign nation if we can't feed ourselves? And from that, in my time that I've been on council, we build that sovereignty. we've built that prerequisite of being sovereign, and that is building a food system. Building food system that's controlled and owned by us. One that we can determine what our foods are, what our first foods are, what our ceremonies that are required when we grow food. So we are able to do that, and we established a farm, a food sovereignty program and a farm that we still have today. So part of me wants to thank Winona for creating that, bringing that knowledge, those teachings back to our people, a simple premise that comes back to the tribes here on the East Coast who have drifted away from those original teachings. And so with that, I want to say, because I could talk here forever, but I don't. You're not here to see me, so let's put it that way. I'm going to say this. It's really a great pleasure to be able to welcome Winona, and she really needs no introduction. But I want to say this, that I thank you on behalf of the tribe for coming back into our place, our home, and this is your home. And I look forward to building those relationships with even further in future generations with our tribal nations, with us as people, with us as a family. So I thank you. And if everyone can join me in welcoming Winona LaDuke.
Anin Indoe Maganada Kaloma relatives. Thank you all so much for the gracious introduction. It is good to be in Narragansett territory, back in our old homeland here. We used to live here before we followed a shell which appeared in the sky to the place where the food grows upon the water. That was our instructions as Anishinaabe people, to follow a shell which appeared in the sky to the place where the food grows upon the water. So that is how significant food is to us, and who we are. But I want to especially thank Don and Cassius Jr. for being out, the Spears family and Lauren, and the president, Mark and Mary, for inviting me, and John for picking me up at 2 a.m. or whenever we got in last night. So thank you all for the honor of being here today. Ani Nindoe Maganado Kalomai relatives. B'nai Sikwe Indigenous Makwendo Deam Gababani Ka Gishkaniganing and Dunjaba. Telling you where I'm from. I'm Bear Clan from the White Earth Reservation in northern Minnesota, Gawawaganikaag. And talk about food. I like talking about food. I'm Bear Clan. We like to talk about food all the time. When's the next snack? That's usually my question. But this is my community. This was taken 2 days ago on Lower Rice Lake. This is wild rice harvest. And that's a bunch of Indian men. I don't know if there's one woman out there. I think the hat might be, but out there harvesting wild rice off of a lake. All you got to do is take care of your water. Wild rice grows on lakes and rivers. Grows in my territory. It's the only place in the world it grows, is here in the center of North America, the center of Turtle Island. And it's a vital way of life for us. You can see the amount of rice those boats are bringing off. 600, 500, 400 pounds of rice. Saw some guys knock 700 pounds. The guys over on the far right of the picture knocked 700 pounds. I was there. And so what you do is you go out on a lake in a canoe. You put your prayers out and your tobacco. You go out with these sticks. They're called knockers. And they look like long drumsticks. And then someone poles. You can see the poles standing up there. They push through the rice beds with the poles, and the second person takes pulls the rice over and knocks it like this into your canoe. That's how you do it for 1,000 years, and you can harvest rice in the same place for 10,000 years if you do it like that. That's a little lesson in sustainability, huh? How you can hang out for a while, just do the right thing, But this month in our language is called Mano Midake, the wild rice making moon. And that is the reason, because it is when the rice arrives. The moon that follows this is called Watebaga Gizis, when the leaves change color. We have a gosh, Cod no Geesis in the freezing over moon. Manadu Geesis Soons, Little Spirit Moon, Gichi Manadu Geesis, Great Spirit Moon. The Mabin and Geesis, that's a sucker moon. That's around February. Onabana Geesis, that's one of my favorites. Onabana Geesis, that's a hard-crusted snow moon. March. Freeze, thaw, freeze again. Also known as the moon you don't want to do a face plant in the snow. Iskigami Zigigizis, that's a maple syruping moon. And then that's around April. And Wabagana Gizis, the flower moon. Odamina Gizis, the strawberry moon. Mean Gizis, that's the blueberry moon, that's July. You know, so why am I telling you that? So you could hear our language, it's a lot like yours, it's different. We, you know, we have a different language, but it is the same language, we're Algonquin speakers, but you know, did you notice that none of those moons are named after a Roman emperor? Did you see that? It is possible to have an entire worldview without empire in it. Look at that. It's all right. New England, let it go. So this is the wild rice-making moon, and you can have it for 1,000 years and you don't need a Roman emperor. I'm going to talk about food, which is about promises, dreams, and intergenerational stories. This is some art by Steve Primo I really like about the seeds and the ancestors, because the seeds are gifts from our ancestors to us. And seeds that we pass to our descendants, they're gifts. And they're also about promise. Anybody who gardens knows that you put in your garden and you're not sure how it's going to go or what it's going to look like. You know, a lot of prayers, a lot of love, a lot of visiting with your plants, right? So it's about hope and promise and faith. That's what gardening is about to me, and that's what growing food is about. And that's pretty much what you need in life. You know, so it teaches you a great deal. And the art on the right is my mother's art. Her name is Betty LaDuke, and she's traveled the world, and this is a G-clay print of a large panel that's probably about 5 feet tall and 4 feet wide, and on masonite, or I don't know, pretty amazing. But you know, I come from a farming family, or a family that celebrates farms. But you know, I like to talk about making America great again. And this is when America was great. This is when there was tremendous agrobiodiversity, when there were 10,000 varieties of corn. Now that was great, you know. And those 10,000 varieties of corn, they were not developed by Monsanto or Syngenta. They were developed by people who looked just like me. You know, on a worldwide scale, people looked just like me, developed all this agrobiodiversity by figuring out which corn was good and how it finished, and selecting it from, because corn doesn't exist in nature. In nature, it's teosinte, which is a tall grass with cool little kernels on it. And so, you know, corn is an example of what humans can do if we do the right thing. You know, corn was created by humans and the Creator, all of those varieties, you know. And my suitcase did not arrive, but maybe it'll show up. They'll bring it in, and then I'll show you my cool corn I brought you to show. But I grow cool corn. But my point is that agrobiodiversity is when things are great. And biodiversity, 50 million buffalo, that's when America was great. When there were 50 million buffalo, and they were the single largest migratory herd in the world. And they transformed ecosystems, built topsoil. And you know, interestingly enough, a buffalo, oh, how did that happen? Hey, I didn't say you could do that. A buffalo, where there's 50 million buffalo today, there's about 28 million cattle. And those cattle take an entire fossil fuels economy to support them. Grass and hay and grain and feedlots and soybeans from Brazil, right? Well, those buffalo, they don't need that. In the wintertime, I had the privilege of watching buffalo out at Yellowstone. I was trying to herd them, keep them in, which was a crazy idea. But you look down there and they go like this with their head, and they go down there and they go get their grass in the middle of winter. They live on 250 different species of prairie grass. So you have tremendous biodiversity that buffalo live on. A buffalo will walk into a storm, a cow will flee it. That's why in times of climate catastrophe, which we are in now, 100,000 cattle died in 2013 in South Dakota in a freak snowstorm. 30,000 here. I don't know, last year, a couple years ago, they had another big death of the animals, you know, because those guys, like a lot of things that are created by industrial society, they don't know how to adapt, you know. So I'm kind of betting on buffalo over the long haul, not cows. I like cows, but buffalo are smarter. That's when America was great, when passenger pigeons darkened the skies. You could drink the water from every stream and creek. That's when America was great. And so I want us to remember that, because one of the things that Americans sadly suffer from is a good case of amnesia, historic amnesia, where we don't know and didn't know the people who were here and the people that still are here. And then we suffer from ecological amnesia. That's what someone called it. It's like where you didn't know that there used to be a shell midden here, or you didn't know that there used to be wild rice here, or there used to be trees. So we don't want to be the people that suffer from amnesia. I want to remember, and I want to bring them back, because that is the opportunity we have. So this is my wild rice on the same lake you saw those guys on, same landing actually. This is Lower Rice Lake. That's a lake full of rice. That's not a pasture. That's me and Dawn Goodwin out there looking at our rice. Got my little tobacco in my hand. We're like, what do you think, Dawn? She's like, looks good. It's a lot of rice, huh? It's a lot of rice. So that is, you know, what we protect in my territory, because on a worldwide scale, where there are indigenous people, there's still biodiversity. They say that we're about 4% of the world's population and 75% of the world's biodiversity. That's because we live where the wild things are. We're the ones who protect those things. And that's why it is like so important in these times of chaos and crisis that indigenous people are understood as protectors of our land, of all of our land. And that it is important to support us in our resistance, but it is also important to learn from us, because we got an idea how to hang out for a while, you know? So the conflicts that exist are long-term. The ones that we face today are conflicts that, you know, I like this picture of Sitting Bull and Custer. That's who that is. And, you know, it's two different worldviews. I call one a Wendigo paradigm, Wendigo economics. And that's the economics of this society. A Wendigo is a cannibal. I first heard that term, I was up in Canada, and I heard this Canadian Indian guy facing clear cutting. He said, sitting down and talking to the Canadian government's a lot like sitting down and talking to a cannibal. Because make as much small talk as you want, but in the end, you know exactly what they're after. So what am I saying? I'm saying, look, it's been a long haul, and there's two different worldviews, and it is perhaps manifest as organic and GMO, but it is, you know, we are at this moment in time where there is a lot of chaos around us. There's a lot of chaos around us, and so it is our time to do something right. But first I have to depress you by saying what's wrong. And to start with, it is the enclosure of the commons. So, as I said, we are the people of the agrobiodiversity. This is Wills, which I think eventually was Pioneer Seeds, and I think that now it is Syngenta. But you can see the origins of agrobiodiversity in northern, this is from North Dakota. And many of the corn varieties that are grown today, if you look in this picture from their seed catalog from 1919, you can see Mandan farms on the Missouri River. That's what those are. Those are Mandan earth lodges on the Missouri River with the corn varieties that came from the Mandan people. That is the same place where the Standing Rock battle over the Dakota Access Pipeline was fought, exactly in these locations. They say the Missouri River was like the Nile River Valley, the Fertile Crescent of northern agrobiodiversity. And today those seeds are held not by us, The increase of industrial agriculture has been dramatic. Some people talk about alternative agriculture, but really industrial agriculture is an aberration of 10,000 years of agriculture. You get a lot of fossil fuels in it, get a lot of money, get a bunch of technology, and looks like that. That's what it looks like. And what we know today is that, today we have not much topsoil left. A huge drawdown of the Oglala aquifer, and that which remains is in peril. And even the seeds themselves are owned by fewer and fewer corporations. So once the seeds are the commons, the agrobiodiversity of the world, today we find that these guys, 2008, 6 companies had the majority of the world's seeds, about 60%. By 2022, they had done more mergers. As you recall, Bayer bought Monsanto. Remember that? Oh no, that was a few years ago. And DuPont and Dow merged, Syngenta. So now you have 4 big seed companies. They control 60% of the world's seeds on the commercial markets. No, that becomes a problem for many reasons. First, I fundamentally don't believe that life should be owned. I don't believe seeds should be owned by corporations. I believe seeds belong to themselves and to farmers. That's what I believe. But more than that, the concentration of seeds in the hands of fewer and fewer farmers means reduced access and reduced diversity in seed varieties, and a push certainly towards increasing amounts of genetically modified agriculture and high petroleum input agriculture. They say that the average meal travels 1,400 miles from a farmer to the table. I was an economics student at Harvard, and there was a lot of talk about the economies of scale argument. The thing is that size matters and large is not good. Why am I saying that? Because we just witnessed that in the pandemic. We witnessed the collapse of big agricultural food systems, the plowing in of farm fields, the tossing out of vegetables, the destruction of millions of little pigs and little chickens. They couldn't get any place in a timely manner, and a bunch of stuff rotting, right? Big is good if you're a corporation, but not good if you're trying to eat the food. And it's also not good to travel that far. A tomato shouldn't travel 1,400 miles. A tomato should be a local thing. So, we have created this system, or we have allowed the creation of a system based on a lot of greed, which concentrated an immense amount of energy and power in the hands of fewer and fewer. But fortunately, there's been resistance on a worldwide scale. In 2020, Mexico banned GMO corn. Why did they ban GMO corn? Mexico banned GMO corn because it was messing with their corn. They also they wanted to protect their indigenous corn varieties and their farms themselves. It was a long and drawn-out legal battle with Monsanto, I believe, at the World Trade Commission and in other entities, but reaffirmed most recently. And, this is what they are protecting. That's pretty tremendous agrobiodiversity. And it is grown by people who look just like me. Maybe a little shorter, but by and large, indigenous people, growing on their farms. And on a worldwide scale, farmers are resisting the enclosures of the commons and the enclosures of the seeds, whether it is in India with the movements of Vandana Shiva and others, or it is, the work, our organization, our work at White Earth, our wild rice, our monomen was awarded the Slow Food Award by, in 2003. So I began to go and travel to visit Italy, where the slow food people would come in from around the world, and I would just be marveled and weep some days at the resistance of farmers to the GMOs and to the taking of their land. And, indeed, in the times that we are in, it is essential that we relocalize our food. So this is my little geeky study in 2008. Oh my gosh, that's a 14-year-old study. I could do a new one, but I'm busy. Okay, the point was, so this is my reservation, and when you spend your money on food as opposed to you harvest it, because I come from a large harvesting economy of wild rice and maple sugar and fish and farming, we spent 86% of our money off reservation buying food. And so, like, I figured out that the Amish economy has a 5 times a multiplier. What am I saying? A multiplier is what you want in your city. You want the money to come in and to circulate, cruise around a little bit. You understand what I'm saying? Like capitalize some other businesses, little guys. But when you get big ag and when you get Walmarts and all those guys, what happens is the money goes off and it doesn't come back, right? And so, like, you know, one of the basic things of economic wealth is to not have a hemorrhage in your economy. That's a good way to keep stuff around instead of having it, you know, move along, right? So we have spent a lot of time rebuilding a local food system in my community. Foodways, rematriation of seeds, and a lot of that was strengthened during the time of the pandemic. But this is one of our seeds. This is a Gete okosaman is what we call this squash. I farm, and I grow corn, beans, squash, potatoes, purple potatoes, that's my specialty, Jerusalem artichokes, and hemp, and then a lot of cool garden vegetables. This is called Gete okosaman, the squash. And the story I heard was that it grew in a, the seeds were found in a archaeological dig in Wisconsin. And in that archaeological dig, they found a clay ball, and in that clay ball, they shook it, and there was something, and they cracked it open, and there were these seeds. Now, I just want you to think that through. Why did we use a clay ball? Well, because a clay would wick out the moisture. You could bury it, could keep it underground, right? And apparently you could keep it for 800 years like that. Not bad thinking, you know. And I think about that because in this moment that we're in, there's a lot of interest now in seed preservation, and you got the Norwegian, the vault, right, in Norway, but didn't they have like some climate change related problems? They had a little flooding in there this year or something, right? So my point is like, you could have all the technology in the world, but maybe you just needed a clay ball, right? And what you need is the people to own the seeds and not them to all be concentrated. Like, I think it's good to keep large seed libraries, you know, but it is also good to just keep seeds and have them accessible by farmers, you know? So this, someone gave me this squash seeds to grow about 10 years ago. Oh, I've lost track of time, maybe 13, 14 years ago. And I was hesitant to grow them at first, and then I grew them out, and they look like this. And I was like, that's cool squash. And they keep really well. The thing about a squash is that it's like a reduced carbon food. What am I saying? Like a zucchini, a summer squash just hangs out for a little while, but a winter squash will hang out all winter. In fact, I'm still eating some spaghetti squash from last year. Huh. You just keep them up high and dry. And so it doesn't need to be like frozen or canned or processed. You see what I'm saying? And so it kind of has its own container. That's why squash is super cool. And so this squash, I grew it out, and then someone corrected me. Of course, it had to be a white guy. He said it's really not was not from an archaeological dig. I found another study that reported it was a Miami squash, some Indians from further south. He said, and it was in a seed collection that they deemed to be 1,000 years old. I was like, okay, that's good. I mean, you know, my 800-year-old date was wrong. He was correct, I'm sure. But when I grew it out and I started talking about it, people kept saying, what's that called? What's that squash called? I was like, I don't know. I mean, they gave me the seeds, and I was like, well, I'm going to name it, right? Because, white guys name stuff all the time. Did you ever notice that? They're busy naming everything, my God. Naming it all kind of after their relatives and their evil Amherst guys, and oh, my God. So anyway, I was like, I'm going to name this squash. So I named the squash. I call it Gete Okosaman, which in Anishinaabe in my language means really cool old squash. That's it. And so you know how you've arrived? Last year I saw this in the Baker Seed catalog, right? And they always asked me if I'd sell it to them. I said, no, I don't sell squash seeds, but someone did. And then they grow it and sell it. But it's called Gete Okosaman in the catalog. I was like, we have arrived, ladies. That's cool, huh? So anyway, that's my cool old squash that I grew a bunch of them this year and a bunch of Lakota squash. The Lakotas did a lot better in my gardens. This is my farm, Winona's Hemp and Heritage Farm, where I grow all kind of cool vegetables. We'll talk a little bit more about that later. But during the time of the pandemic, what happened is that all these kids moved onto the farm because they couldn't go to school anyway. And so who would you rather hang out with, in the housing projects or with Auntie Winona and your horses, right? So this is our first attempt at horse farming with a pony. As you see, this is a 3-person, 1-horse operation. I just have to show you that we weren't pros to start with. We had to evolve over time, right? But we could talk about a lot of things, but a horse has a lot more power than I do, right? And so I'm interested in pre- and post-petroleum agriculture. That's what I'm interested in. And it turns out that all our stuff is pre-petroleum. It never got grown, it never got commodified, it never got sold big because, we aren't going to do that. It didn't make the cut. Monsanto had other stuff, but so we hung around and we tilled up with our little pony Orion here. And but it turns out that the farm, if it's 70 acres or under, it's not only a cyclical farming system, but it is the most efficient farming system is with horses. And so why would you do that? Oh, that's right, because they eat local and they create their own fertilizer, right? They're a lot more pleasant than a tractor. And that's cool, And they have a lot more power than you. So then we upscaled. We like that. Those are ponies. That's Orion and Pegasus. And they're putting in a cornfield in basically what was formerly a dead zone occupied by an agriculture company, RDO Offutt. And then this is the Amish buying my horses. Look at that. My two are on the outside kind of slagging behind the beautiful Belgians. But that's a cornfield being put in by the Amish with my horses. And then this is some of our corn. Some of my granddaughters, Terry Sue. So those kids moved in with me because they didn't have anything better to do and because I was fun. And so during the time of the pandemic, I basically, like a lot of other people, didn't go anywhere, but stayed on my farm and grew more and more and more food and learned a lot more about growing and a lot more about farming with horses and spent a lot of time with horses and with my neighbors who are all Amish. And so it was a great bonding. And we still have our cool. This is some of our plants. This one over on the far right is the great pumpkin. Is that the coolest pumpkin you ever saw or what? That's like the giant pumpkin. These are some of my kids. This little dude on the far right with a pumpkin, he just asked me to adopt him. I thought that was the sweetest thing. I was like, wait, you can become a mother at 63. How great is that? So in a couple months, I'm going to go be his formal mother. That's great, though, huh? At 63, just a miracle. Anyway, so let me see if I can. Oh, thank you. Thank you for that. So this is, I look like a hippie in my hemp field. I do. It's like totally my 70s picture. This is me going into my hemp field, which was at that year on tribal land, adjoining this farmer. And the farmer complained to the tribe that there was noxious weeds. So I was like, wait, let me go see. And I was like, oh, like these? Like noxious weed? I was like, so this is my 7 or 8 foot tall hemp plants. So I'm a fiber hemp grower. That's what I grow. I don't grow anything that you can get high off of. Everything I grow is less than 0.3% THC. And I'm interested in hemp because hemp is going to change the world. And I call it the new green revolution. And I call it the new green revolution freely because the University of Minnesota claims that they had the father of the green revolution there, a guy named Norman Borlaug. So I was like, well, I want to be the mother of the new green revolution. How's that? You know, but we actually need doulas. We don't need one. In order to do this, you need a whole bunch of growing. Because if you're going to change the world, you can't do it just in your garden. You can, but you got to get bigger than that. So this is a little bit about hemp. And that's to say that, to start with, let's just put it this way. The word canvas comes from cannabis. So that means that everything that was made out of canvas, like all of those sails that your ancestors came on, that would be out of cannabis. That would be out of hemp. Those are hemp sails. The rope, and then you just start from there. I mean, Henry Ford made a car out of hemp. Pretty much anything in the materials economy, any bioplastic. My favorite is this new hemp wood and this hemp insulation. The building industry should just be revolutionized by hemp. Because you could, for instance, hemp hurd becomes a hempcrete. And you could replace concrete, which if it was a country, concrete would be the third largest source of CO2 emissions in the world. Concrete. We got all kind of concrete, and we don't need all that kind of concrete. You don't need concrete and everything. So let me just explain a little bit about the plants that I grow. A tall, you know, I'm sure that you've seen pictures or you've seen cannabis plants. They look like a Christmas tree, right? That's the females, and everybody is smoking bud. That's what you want on those is bud, right? On mine, what you want is pretty much the seeds and the stem. Because the seeds and the stem, the exterior of it is where the fiber is. And that's about 30% or 25% of the plant is the fiber of the stalk. And that is what you turn into textiles. The remaining 70% is hurd. And the hurd is what you can turn into all kind of building materials. And so I'm interested in, and what we are doing is building an intertribal hemp cooperative in my region because my tribe has 837,000 acres of land. The tribes next to me have millions of acres of land. And a lot of that is the kind of land that you would want to grow this hemp economy on. Now, why I'm saying that is because if you have 50,000 uses of it, from fuel to varnishes to, you know, concrete or hempcrete to textiles, you need a lot. And hemp also sequesters carbon at the fastest rate of any field crop. Now, if you think about it, this is how it works. It grows really tall, really fast, and when it grows really tall, really fast, it pulls down a bunch of carbon in it. And when it pulls down that carbon, it gets into its little body. It also grows, as far as it is up tall, it is down below. Because it has to have a root system, which is kind of like a root ball, with which to control that height. Y'all follow me on this? And so because of that, it is also really incredible for bioremediation, which is taking heavy metals pretty much out of your soil. And I'm telling that to you in New England because there are plenty of Superfund sites that would do well probably with some hemp. You know, so I'm saying is that this is a miracle plant. I like this quote. We had a choice between a carbohydrate economy and a hydrocarbon economy, and we made the wrong choice. Around 1938, Marijuana Prohibition Act, hemp was criminalized in this country. Not criminalized everywhere else in the world, but a lot of the world it was criminalized because the United States wields great influence, criminalizing hemp on a worldwide scale, including countries like Japan that had a hemp economy. That was their primary fiber source, criminalized it across the world. And in that process, there was a lot of reasons. People say it was criminalized for, you know, because we were all getting stoned. It was criminalized because the paper industry wanted it criminalized, the textile industry wanted it criminalized, and the oil industry wanted it criminalized. That's why it happened. But the implications are that we could have done everything we have done with fossil fuels with hemp. And it's so close, the word carbohydrate versus hydrocarbon. I think that's so interesting that they are so close, and we just made the wrong choice. So now is our opportunity to bring it back. This is my hemp field a few years ago, Kula. My extended family, we all still work on the same stuff, huh? Cool, but you can see that it doesn't look like anything you want to smoke. People say, I was like, no, you don't want to smoke that. Just get a headache. Go get yourself some cannabis at the dispensary. And then here's the growth of the industry. So I feel like the potential of the cannabis economy is pretty tremendous in terms of not only legalization, but in terms of the transformation that is potential in the hemp economy. And my interest is in making sure that Indigenous people and people of color are at the table, not on the menu. In the last economy, the war on drugs took a very heavy toll on us. Criminalization of people of color for having a joint is much higher than the criminalization of white people. And so my interest is in the next economy, which should be equitable. And people like us who have the land, we should be able to get our land back and farm hemp. So that's what we're growing. So this is a little bit about land back and the intersection between land back and food. You all don't need this map, but basically that's what happened. 99% of our land is held by someone else. That's pretty much the story of Indian country, including a lot of land grant colleges, but sadly yours doesn't have any. And didn't benefit. I heard the story that Brown got all the land, then didn't pass it on. But here it is, and so I'm interested in the intersection between food sovereignty and land back. Here's one of my nephews riding one of my horses. His name is Wasu. The kid's name is Leroy. And we had some horse competition on land, and this land was formerly owned by the Enbridge Corporation, a company that tar sands pipelines shoved down our throat after 7 years last year. Fought him for 7 years, tried everything, went to court, didn't miss a hearing, didn't miss a beat. But oil is an addictive substance, and addicts make bad decisions. And so we got a tar sands pipeline through our territory, and the corporation, Enbridge, Canadian multinational that controls a lot of the Great Lakes these days, they bought the land around my organization. We had 40 acres, little demonstration farm, and they bought the land on two sides of it so that they can conduct surveillance on us. That's what they did. And they did a lot of surveillance on it. We used to do our best dance routines at the window, I was like, what are you doing, guys? I don't have any trade secrets here, but anyway, so we got that land back, and then this is to show you what land on our reservation looks like, okay? So all those dots, those circles are industrial ag. They are on our reservation. That is largely RDO Offutt, which is the single largest potato farmer in the United States. They farm for McDonald's. Those French fries come from my reservation. And then there's this Alex Bishop. He's moved in there. I don't even know that cat. And then those two parcels at the bottom are ours. And my village is right above that. I was like, can you fix that map, my friends? But you can say it's Pine Point. That's my village. And so what we did is we started buying out the land owned by the jerks right next to our village, basically. And that land, the one on the left, is full of hemp. I put in 60 acres of hemp on that land. I have a hemp maze. I'm going to get a lot of children lost and crying in there in about 2 weeks. It's fabulous. They don't even know, but I have the drone shot that shows you how to get out. That was a good move for me because I would get lost in there too. But so this is what land back looks like. And in order to grow your food as native people or to be sovereign, you actually have to have your land. And so our work is over the last year, we've purchased 800 acres of land around our reservation and throughout our ecosystem to protect it. And the purple land is the land that I'd like to go after next. You can see that farm adjoins. And this Big Rush Lake is, you can see that there's a tremendous biodiversity in this area, but then there's these guys. But this is how our story continues. This is my attorney, Parching Wild Rice. So in the midst of everything, there's some things that are for sure, and that is our food. And so we fight that's why we were fighting the corporations, because we wanted to protect our rice from oil. And so here is our attorney protecting it. But you know, over the long term, when I figure out what I'm going to take my futures in, it's probably hemp and buffalo. Why am I saying that? Because I don't know what my 401k is going to be worth or your 401k is going to be worth, you know? But I know that if I can feed my families, you know, if I can heat and we've got enough energy and food, we'll be okay. You know, my future's really tied up on if I could drink my water. My future's tied up in if I can, you know, live good. But this is the signing of the Buffalo Treaty. That's what this is. This is my kind of treaty. This is an agreement between, I think there's 45 indigenous nations from both sides of the border, National Park Service, a bunch of agencies in the states, signing a treaty to preserve the buffalo. Because when you bring back your buffalo on your reservation, you need to do more than that. There's 40 tribes that have buffalo herds now, right? But they need corridors. They need to roam. They need more land. They need national parks. They need to be able to like cruise around because they're buffalo, right? And that's what this treaty is. This is a treaty for the buffalo. And I was a privilege to go to a signing in June of the Buffalo Treaty. I was a witness. And this is another treaty which is really about our future. This is a treaty called the Two-Row Wampum Treaty. It was between people out here, actually the Iroquois Confederacy and our people. It's a wampum belt. Y'all know what wampum belts are? You seem pretty good. Okay, Dawn, no, I won't do that to you. It is, you know, it is made of quahog. It is shells, and it's a way to record history and important events. Well, this treaty was recorded by white people. It was reaffirmed, but in 1706, there's a reaffirmation of this treaty, and the treaty is called the One Dish, One Spoon Treaty. And what that treaty is a treaty between the Iroquois Confederacy and the Anishinaabe people and our relatives here. And in that treaty, we said, we all eat from one dish. That dish is Mother Earth. And so we should take care of our dish. And we all eat with one spoon. That is to say, in ceremonies, often you serve people, now we use sippy cups because of COVID, but you serve people with one spoon to show that you are relatives. And really, that is what food and seeds are about, this opportunity to understand that we have one dish and one spoon. And we should take care of our Mother Earth, our water, and our seeds for the future. I like this Zapatista proverb. They tried to bury us. They didn't know we were seeds. And it is true. You know, it is so true. And in the case of seeds, as is in the case of Gete Okosamen, they last. They come back if you have faith and prayers and give them water and soil. They will return. In the case of our wild rice, my partner was out ricing yesterday on a lake where the rice had been diminished for 50 years, Ogeechee Lake. Another lake 17 years, but it was because it was flooded out for white people's cabins. And they didn't want the rice, they wanted the lake shore for their bigger boats, right? You understand how this could happen, right? Well, they had a drought, and what came back? 50 years later, the wild rice, the seeds had laid dormant at the bottom of the lake. So I say believe in the seeds. Believe in those seeds because those seeds are about life. And this is what our work is under the Anishinaabe agriculture. So miigwech. I'm happy and thank you for your time today, and I'm happy to answer some questions. Miigwech.
So we have time for, is it on? On? No? Maybe this time? Now you can hear? Now? Okay. So we have time for a couple, sorry, I've never done this before. So we have time for a couple questions.
Thank you so much. I had a hemp question. So with the climate and the warming of the planet, my thought was that you could only raise hemp in a very warm environment, right? So if you researched hemp, India had a lot of hemp. I don't know if they still do. So you're raising hemp in northern Minnesota. And how are you doing that in the winter?
All right. So first of all, hemp grows everywhere. And our organization purchased a Russian seed collection last year. 71 varieties that were part of the Vavilov collection. Because it turns out that Russia, before Prohibition, was the largest hemp grower in the world. It adapts, and in part it's because it is so much daylight. So we're north, but we have a lot of daylight. So 70, 80 days, it loves it. And so a lot of my work is in the agrobiodiversity of hemp and trying to scale seed varieties so that we can have good crops that are in our territory. And I'm sure that at some point we could probably do much more with it. I've been growing this year with the University of Minnesota. I grew out 8 feral varieties for them. And so if you think about feral hemp, so it was criminalized in 1938. And so these hemp seeds hung out illegally for like 80 years, right? That's pretty cool, huh? I was like, yeah, I want to grow them. So that's a resilient plant. It adapts, it grows like a weed. I mean, it figured out how to hang out. So I think that's why I think it is really, a magical plant for the future. And I think everybody, the USDA and I can't remember what year, a long time ago, like in the 1800s, required each farmer to grow a 1/4 acre of hemp and a 1/4 acre of flax. Yeah, it'll grow anywhere. Thanks for your question.
Hi, that was wonderful. I'm wondering what role you think universities should take in terms of supporting food sovereignty and working with local tribes, and what are some good stories you know from tribal university partnerships? Okay, what do you think the role of universities is in supporting food sovereignty efforts, and do you know any good stories of tribal university partnerships?
After the University of Minnesota's fiasco with the Green Revolution, I was kind of skeptical. And I fought them on genetic engineering of wild rice too, because the University of Minnesota felt that it had a right to genetically engineer wild rice, and we fought them. But I have great partners at the U now, and the cannabis department. So funny. I think it's great that there's a cannabis department at the University of Minnesota, and the guys just of course, there's a big love fest, because you know what it turns out? He came up to see me, and to me, you guys hung out with me for an hour. I love farming, you can tell that. And our farms are happy farms, our plants are happy, right? And so he came up to see me, and he's looking at the hemp plants, and he's like, whoa. He's like, furthest north and largest plants. I was like, thank you. Every time someone comes to our farms, that's what they say. So I believe that you can build a good partnership, but we had very carefully crafted agreements that we get to keep seeds. They don't own them. And in the varietal development, we need to grow out at a scale the 71 varieties. I have 71 varieties of Russian hemp. And I was like, how are we going to grow that? So I am interested in partnerships, but I'm interested in retaining the seeds. Because, I don't want to have my tribes be buying seeds and be in seed slavery in the future. And also, we want to adapt the seeds. You don't want fewer. You want some varieties that you can harvest, whether it is with a combine. We actually bought a combine. I never thought I'd buy a combine. But I got a combine, because if you're going to do 60 acres of hemp, you are not hand harvesting it. You need a combine, with a special gizmo. So you need partners. Universities need to do the right things, though, and not appropriate other people's stuff. And you're the place, like this is an ag school. I thought that was great when I woke up and realized I was at an ag college. I was like, that's my kind of place. Grow some cool stuff, figure out how to grow our future. That's what we gotta do. You know, so universities are a good place to do that. Thanks for your question.
Time for one more question.
Thank you. I was just wondering how much hemp do you harvest annually, and what happens to it after you harvest it? Do you sell it? Do you share it? Do you trade it? Mm-hmm.
Okay, so to be clear about this, I've been a hemp farmer for 7 years. I've been a corn farmer for 40, right? So I'm like just learning about hemp, and I never grew marijuana. You know what I'm saying? It's like, I was like, well, I could grow corn. Can I grow hemp, right? So I have federal and state permits. I've never grown a hot crop. Nothing's ever over 0.3% THC. But when they criminalized hemp, they basically destroyed all the infrastructure too. Minnesota used to have 11 hemp mills. Minnesota used to have 11 hemp mills. We processed our own hemp into clothing, into textiles, into canvas for all those boats. You know, that's what we did in Minnesota. We had it down. And then it was criminalized. And so then the industry is largely China's, where if you get a hemp shirt today, it's from China. And they don't, and they grow a fantastic crop, but they use all kind of chemicals to process it that are caustic. And so my interest is in, like, what did we do before all the caustic chemicals to process hemp? You know, and how do you process hemp? And, you know, the answer then was slavery, because it's a highly, like, it takes a lot. But with mechanization, you don't need slaves, which is a good thing. You know, but there's still these questions about, so what I do is I cut it off the field, we use a sickle mower, we bale it into round bales, and then we sent our hemp to North Carolina, where these guys were figuring out how to build a decorticator, which is the thing you need to do to separate the hurd from the fiber. Y'all got that part of class, right? Hurd and fiber, right? So they run it through this giant, like, bust it up with like, you know, just bust it all up thing. And then it's separated out, but it wasn't, you have to have it clean, it has to be good. And then you take it, and the decorticated hemp, you have to degum it to make textiles. Patagonia, all of that stuff it needs, there's a gum, it's like pectin, it's called lignin. And so that you gotta take off, that's what they're taking off with chemicals. These guys down in the southeast figured out how to do it in a non-chemical manner. We have worked with Navajo weavers who also have figured out how to do it. And they made premium Navajo textiles. I was telling some people today that at the New York Fashion Week, some of my hemp was on a model's body. Came from some Navajo weavers. That's pretty cool, huh? I was like, that's it. That's it. And so my hemp went through this degumming process, and Patagonia took my hemp and is producing 500 bags with it, with my hemp. That's cool, huh? So that's what I had to do. And I'm a slow and deliberate process person. Like, I didn't get into this for money, I got into this for love. And that's one of the mistakes in agriculture and in cannabis, is people get into it for money. Don't get into life for money, get into it for love. You know, and so now I want to bring all that equipment to the north, because I don't want to spend my time shipping my stuff across the country. And I think, you know, I'm working on getting to that. But the equipment had to be reconstructed and re-engineered. And there's a couple, you know, there's nobody in North America producing a textile yet. Everybody who's got one is getting it from China. But we, you know, I don't want to be the one person who produces it. I want 40 hemp facilities. Because if you're going to change the world, you need to not be the person making cool hemp doilies, you know, the corner. You want all the textiles out of it. So that's what happened to my last crop. And my next crop, I might, I think I'm going to, the Navajos and I are going to make some fancy blankets out of it, or some of it, and some of it's going to turn into housing. Thank you for your question. Winona's hemp, you can look me up online in this Anishinaabe agriculture and keep track of our progress, our little slow learning. But it turns out we're right at the front. I feel pretty good about us. Good?
Well, thank you so much, and that's all the questions that we have time for this evening. I'm sorry, I keep breaking up. Thank you so much, Winona, for coming and sharing your wisdom with us and your experience with growing hemp and with food sovereignty in Minnesota. And really appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you so much for having me tonight.